All right, so I'm on page 61 of the handout. So we're to the point now where we have to generate the random number. And the author mentions there are different ways to create the random number, and there are different places where the random number could be created. All right? And he says, well, it sure makes sense that if we're going to do this, that we would put it in view did load. So that as soon as the program starts up, not only will the slider have the correct value, or that variable, but also we'll have a random number generated. All right? This is that ARC4 random uniform that I talked about with you before when we did the guessing game. The only difference is when I did it, I did the int arc random uniform for 100 plus 1, where they've got the 1 plus here. So this should generate a random number between 1 and 100. If you leave that off, it's going to be between 0 and 99, which isn't what we want. All right, that's why we're adding the 1 to it. That's what he explains in here. So I'm going to add that line of code inside of my view did load routine right now. All right. Okay, everybody see what I just did right out of the book? What's the problem with this line when I run the program right now? What's the problem with that line? There's nothing syntactically wrong with what he did. What's the problem with the program right now? There's no variable that we've created up here that's called target value. So we're going to have to create one, otherwise we're going to get an error when we attempt to run the program. All right? So the author mentions on the bottom of page 61 that right underneath our var current value, we'll put var target value. We'll again make that an int, and we'll set it equal to 0. Now we should have no problem if we go back and we run the program again. All right. All right. And on the next page there, on page 62, and this should go, you should know this already, but as the author says, when you're starting to do this stuff, you're going to get error messages here and there depending on how you write your code. What some people like to do is they like to think, they sit down and they do kind of draw up what the program is going to look like. And they might come up and say, I'm going to have 13 variables in this program. And they may declare them at the top of the program before they've ever written any routines that are going to use them. All right? And that's fine. And other people may do it the way the author just showed it right here. All right. So the next thing that we're supposed to do on page 62 is we're supposed to come in here and make a change to our show alert. If you look up on the screen here, whoops, in yellow, we're supposed to change that message line, because now what we want to show is not only what the value of the slider is, but what our target value was. All right? So I'm going to grab that code and I'm going to put it into my show alert. All right, so hopefully all of you can see that. I just added, doesn't matter if you put the plus sign on the same line up here or put it on a new line, all right? But this should say on one line now the value of the slider is, so if I do it at the beginning, it should say the value of the slider is 50, but now the target value, which means now we have a random number that's been generated, all right? Well, think about this. We're going to have to do more than that, right? Because as of right now, we don't know what the random number is until the alert comes up. That's not really very good. That's not what we want. But that's the way, again, he's going through this very determinedly. All right? So he says you can run the app now and try it out. I'm not going to do that because I just want us to go on. They show you what it should look like, something like this. This would be a random run on the top of page 63. But again, if we don't start stepping it up a little, we won't have time to finish this, and I'd like us to be able to finish it. All right? All right. So the next thing they talk about on page 63 is they say now we have to add rounds to the game. It says if you press the hit me button a few times, you'll notice the random number never changes. Well, eventually you'd get it right, correct? If you had enough chances, everybody would get it right. All right? So our to-do list actually said generate a random number at the start of each round. We're not doing that right now. So the author says, with that in mind, we have to add a new method to our viewcontroller.swift file, which is on page 64. So let's take a look at it, and then you can start adding it whenever you're comfortable. All right. So what are we doing here? We're telling it every time you start a new round, generate a new random number. All right. Set our current value back to 0, and set our slider value back to, set our current value to 50 and set the slider to 50. All right? Does everybody understand? Please look up on the screen here. You don't want to flip these two things? Because here you're setting current value to 50, and then you're setting the sliders to current value. So you have to have it set. Otherwise, it would have been whatever current value was currently at. You don't want to do that. So if you would, please go in and key in that. Doesn't matter if you put it at the top or at the bottom. It's not going to change anything. But when you get done, also add that call to that. All right. Also add the call to it into your view did load. Once you add that call to it in view did load, you don't need to generate a random number anymore in view did load because you're already generating it up here. You don't want code bloat. It makes no sense to generate a random number, then generate another random number. That doesn't make any sense. All right, so put this in and then change your view did load as are shown on page 64 in the book. Oh, also add a line to call the start new round at the end of your show alert function. We'll go over this all in just a second. So if you look up on mine now after I made all these changes, again, we're not done yet, but you'll notice how now it says the value of the slider is 83. I just moved it. And my target value, or the random number that I happen to generate, was 59. So since I know it was 59, I can try doing it again. You'll notice, but now it's generated a new number. Good. All right, so it does appear to be working. I don't know if you've finished or not, but if you look up on the screen, let's just take a minute and go over everything that's happening here. All right? So, pretty good name, start new round. We could put a comment there, probably should. Generate new random number between 1 and 100. All right? Set our current value variable to 50. Set our slider value to the value of current variable, or current value. Now that we've done all that, now that we've got to start new round, there's two other things that we have to do. The first is, in our view-did-load routine, previously in our view-did-load routine, we were setting the current value and the target value. We don't have to do that anymore. We're already doing it in start new round. So I commented those out and just put a call in to start new round. Plus, after I show the alert, I'm also calling start new round. All right? You've made your guess. So that every single time you make a guess, it's going to tell you your status. We haven't put points in there yet. We'll do that soon. But it's going to generate a new number. Does all that make sense? All right. If it does not, the author does a very fine job of explaining what's going on here on page 64 and also going on to page 65. And also on page 65, and I want to say this, even if you get it, and I think most of you do, the author says two things. First, sometimes when you call a routine, it'll give you an error. So if you say start new round like this, it just won't recognize it. I don't know the rhyme or reason. If that happens, try putting self dot in front of it. Self is like this that we talked about in Java. It's the current thing that you're working with. All right? The other thing is the author says, well, the reason that I created a brand new func or method in here called start new round was if we did not do that, whoops, we'd have to grab that same code and put it both in view-did-load and in show alert. So we're starting to get code bloat. All right? So by writing just one function, then if something changes for whatever reason, we don't have to change it in one place. All right? That's the way you should be writing code. All right, on page 66, he talks about the fact that I named this start new round because you should always come up with names for your functions that kind of reflect what you want the function to do. That should make sense. All right. Also, if you look on the top of page 67, you know this word, but he doesn't mention it here. See that line right there that's in blue, right near the top of the page? What are we doing right here? What is this doing? Yeah, but there's a word we used for that. It's casting. All right? We are forcing that. All right? All right, so we're down to the bottom of page 67, putting the target value into a label. Well, what it would be nice would be when we go in here and we're doing our program right now. Right now, every time we run it, that says 100, correct? We don't want that. We want it to show us the number that's just been randomly generated, so we know how to move the slider accordingly to the left or to the right. So that's the next step. It says when you made the storyboard, you already added the label for the target value in the upper right-hand corner. The trick is to put the value from the target value variable into this label. To do that, it says you need to do two things on the bottom of page 67. Oops. Number 1, it says create an outlet for the label so you can send it a message. Number 2, give the label new text to display. All right? So this is very similar to things that we've already done, but if you turn up to page 68, the author shows us here what it is we should be doing. He prefaces this by saying what we're doing is going to be very similar to what we did when we worked with the slider. All right? So the author says here that you should manually add that line of code. I've already told you I don't like doing it that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my label that's in the upper right-hand corner right here. You see what I just highlighted? All right? My label right here. And then I'm going to hold down on the touchpad and on control, I'm going to move this up a ways, and I'm going to put a new variable right there that's going to hold that. All right? And that's exactly what the author is showing us. Or again, you could manually key it in also. All right, but I'm going to put a new variable in. I'm going to just hit enter a couple times here. All right, so with that highlighted, I'm holding down on control and my touchpad, and I'm dragging up. All right, it already says outlet on it, which is good. That's what I want. It says weak on it. That's what I want. It says UI label on it. That's what I want. So the only thing I have to do is add my name, which they call target label. So as far as I can tell, it looks the way that it should be looking right now. All right, so I'm going to click connect. All right, and now I've got the new thing right here. IB outlet, weak var target label, colon UI label with an exclamation point on the end. All right. Okay. Then it says, now the good stuff, halfway down on the page. It says, add the following new method right below your start new round. Okay? Does everybody understand? I'm asking this, and I'm not trying to talk down to anybody. But by now, does everybody understand what this is doing? This is saying whatever that target value was, which is our random number, what we're shooting for, grab that and put it in that particular label that's in the upper right-hand corner, which is exactly what we wanted to do right now. So that's what we're telling it to do. And we're adding our own new thing, and I didn't mention this before. How come there's no IB outlet in front of this? There was no IB outlet in front of start new round either. Why aren't there IB outlets there? How about because they're not directly being called by something that's in the interface filter? They're being called by something that's in the they're called from something that's called from something, basically. All right? So we don't put IB outlet there. That would mean that we'd have to click a button or do something to make it happen. We don't want that. So let's add this particular thing as shown here on the bottom of page or middle of page 68. They also mentioned on the bottom of this page, we're putting it into our own method because we might be calling this from different places. Okay? If everybody look on the screen here, or on the board. See that? Why are we casting? Why are we doing a cast? Because target value is an int. Some languages, you already know this, they allow you to play nice with one another. You know, it says, oh, you probably mean to convert that. This isn't one of those languages. If you leave that off, you're getting an error message because you're trying to assign an integer value, a numeric value, to a string, which is what text is. So we cast it into type string to make sure that it works. And they explain that on the bottom of page 68 and then on to page 69. Okay? And it says you can also write it on page 69 here. It says if it makes it easier for you to understand, they said you could have also written it like this. Right there. Okay? All right. It says which one is better? It's a matter of taste. So now you've got to go in and you've got to, again, go down to View Did Load and Show Alert. Okay? One more time. Please look up on the screen if you would. Okay? It may get to the point where if this is a complex enough game, I don't know if you agree with this or not, you may have 10 or 15 different functions you're calling here, correct? If you're calling the same 10 or 15 functions here and here, you might want to take all those function calls and put them in their own function so you only call it once. Those are the kind of things that kind of distinguish good developers from developers. You don't put extraneous code in when you don't have to. All right? And if you do have extraneous code in, you look for a way to get rid of it. All right, it isn't that bad here. That's just a couple calls. I'm just going to keep with what the author has in the book, but it is something that you should be thinking about. All right? So, in my Show Alert and my View Did Load, I'm going to have to add those. There's Show Alert. And View Did Load. All right, ideally now, once we've done this, I'm going to save and I'm going to try to run it again. Again, unfortunately, mine takes a while, but now you should have what is shown on page 70 on the handout. So if you look up on the screen, now what you should have there is it should show you the number that you're looking for. All right? So what have we built? Basically, when you look at it, we've kind of built the first upper half, right? Okay? We're going to have to add more stuff, and right now, we're not keeping score. We're not keeping score of the round. But it looks like, at least, what's left is we have to be able to, well, if they click Start Over, we want to make sure that it starts over. All right? We want to make sure their score is correct. And how are we going to do that? It'll change as we go on. Originally, where it says like 83, if you put it on 83, how many points do you think you get? How about 83? All right. But eventually what we'll do is if you get it exactly on your first guess, we'll give you a bonus. So we'll give you more points. Or if you're within, so maybe you get an extra 100 points. And if you're within five points or 2 points or whatever, you get 50 points. That kind of an idea. That's what they're moving for. All right. And we want to be able to add this stuff, and then eventually we'll also want to go back, and when you click the information button, we'll want a screen to come up that'll explain how the game is played. All right, we'll do all that stuff as we go on in here. All right. What I'll do is I think at least, I might have all the code that he has. Do you notice how he mentions here on the bottom of page 70? It says you can find the project files for the app up till this point under 03-outlets in the tutorial source code folder. If I can find that code, I'll throw that out there. All right? All right. All right. On page 71, he talks about action methods and normal methods. And he says, what's the difference? And he said, really, there isn't any. The only thing is an action method has an IB action in front of it, which again means that it's something directly linked to the interface builder. But for example, the start new round and the update labels are not actions directly related to the interface builder. So they have func in front of them, but they don't have IB action in front of the func. Okay? All right. Then what he does on page 72 is he's trying to sell you his book. I'm just putting it the way it is. He says, here's some highlights of it, etc. All right, let's move on to page 73. Calculating the score. We're not going to finish this in this class period, but we can at least get a start on it, okay? All right, so I'm on page 73, calculating the score. So we're about, with 152 pages, we're approximately halfway done with this. All right? It says, now that you have both a target value, which is your random number, and a way to read the slider's position, you can calculate how many points the player has scored. The closer you get to the target, the more points you get. That should make sense. I want to mention something to you, and I also mentioned this in some of the lectures that I've been doing lately that I've just been taping. Okay? Right here, he goes through a big shtick in this because he doesn't know how much experience you have with this. I think you'd all agree that if the slider is here and you click hit me, you're 17 away. I think everybody agrees with that. And it doesn't matter if you say 73 minus 56 or 56 minus 73. Either way, you're 17 away. But if you take the smaller value minus the bigger value, you get a negative number. So what he gets to is, you really should use absolute value in here, because then it doesn't matter. All right? So why did I tell you that? Because he spends quite a bit of time talking about that. You don't really need to, because you already know what absolute value is, but he's writing this book not knowing at all the familiarity the reader has with doing something like this. Yeah. Well, like I said, so I spent 2 minutes on it where he spends quite a bit of time on it. So he talks about it on 74, 75, 76, 77. Right. And that gets us all the way to page 77. So let me jump up to there. All right. Did he put code on the bottom of the previous page? He probably did. All right. So notice what he has. He's to the point here where he's saying this. The value of the slider is 50. The target value is 16. The difference is 34. That's good. So he's doing all the calculations. Eventually you won't want to show all that stuff, of course. But he's showing it now so you can see exactly what's going on. And he talks about multiplying it by -1 if it's less than 0. So again, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. All right? I don't know why he uses that as opposed to absolute value, but he does it that way. One thing that we're going to have to do, all right, again, he's got more ways of calculating the difference, and like as Zane said, it's a lot of pages. Let's come up and do this, if you haven't done so already, and that is in your code at the top of your program where you've got those var statements. Let's put another var in there that's called difference, make it an int, and again, set it equal to 0. All right, so let's do that line that you see right here. Var difference colon int equals 0. Okay? Then in our show alert, well, he's still keying in stuff and still keying in stuff and still keying in stuff. All right, let's jump all the way, like I said, up to page 80. And then on page 80, he finally shows what he should have shown to begin with. All right, and that is we should go into our show alert and either above the message or below the message. He shows it above, so let difference equal ABS for absolute value of target value minus current value. All right, let me move that up a bit. So it's that line that you see here. I don't know, it doesn't really show very blue, but put that line on. And I think that everybody understands what's going on there. We just talked about it. Seems like a pretty good place to stop right here. We're about on the top of page 82, all right, keeping track of the player's scores. So we'll pick it up there next class, all right? Hopefully you'll have a chance, and I will try to do this, if not between classes and at the end of the next class. I'll make sure I've got all the copies that we've been working on this out there. So if you've fallen behind, you'll be able to just hopefully catch up that way.